Introduction to Computers. November 1, we talked about the internet and security. We started off today and we went in and we talked about the internet itself. We talked about tier 1 providers and how we have these routers. The internet, the term internet actually came from internetwork. Internetworking, the internet allows us by way of these internet service providers to connect lots of networks, whether it's a simple network at your house through Mediacom or the ICN and the networks here on campus, or whether it's Facebook, all Yahoo connected in, and so forth. And so we have those tier 1 providers who manage the heart of the internet and all those devices connecting in. So really it's the infrastructure, it's the path that moves the data. It moves the data based on those IP addresses. Okay? Then we talked about some other terms, like the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web uses the intranet to transfer its information using HTTP, HTTPS, and that HTML. And in the project you have to do a little bit of work to force you to understand the rhyme or reason and how that works. Okay? We talked about then file transfer protocol, the idea of uploading files and downloading files, and secured copy, how we can send information from one server to another using secured copy. We talked about how email works, and we used college as an example. So let's say you're at McDonald's using Wi-Fi, you connect through their ISP, whoever they're connected to, and you are going to NIACC.edu to check your mail. So then through the internet knows that that public address goes to the ICN, they send it to NIACC's router, it sends it over to the campus to the email server. The email server then sends you a list back of the email that you received. And if you want to download any of that email to your machine to look at it, then you can click on it, and then that information actually moves through the internet back to your computer wherever you're sitting. And that's the way all the mail works, you know, whether you have a Yahoo account or Gmail or whatever. And then we did talk briefly about the fact that you have an email server internally, then you also have the issue of all the spam email coming in. And you say, well, you can eliminate the spam or take it off the server, but it's still eating up some of your bandwidth coming in and out from your service provider, internet service provider. All right. And then we also referred to briefly, you can have a private network, and where you pay the provider to make the connection between your locations. And then out there in the world there's all these data centers that you can either get through the internet or they're connected through private providers. We talked briefly about websites and HTML again, a little review. We talked about the term cloud computing, this whole concept of doing computing outside of your own local area, services provided in the cloud. We talked about intranets. An intranet is like an internet using browsers to gather information, but it's managed internally, and it's just for internal information. Like here at NIACC, we have an intranet that they use to share information within the campus to the, not the students actually, but to the staff and the faculty. And then if you want an outside site to access your intranet, you can turn it into an extranet and allow someone from the outside to access it. I mentioned also a lot of intranets, they stop search engines from searching them, so the information in an internet will not show up in a web search like Google, Yahoo, and Bing. Okay. We didn't have time, we didn't cover VPNs. We'll have to cover those, in which you can set up a network connection through the internet and secure it and actually have two sites talk to each other. We'll look at that next week. And then we just did an introduction in terms of security. We talked about integrity. You know, is the data accurate? Is it correct? We talked about confidentiality, who can see what data, and then the other key thing is availability. How do we make the data available to who needs it and make sure the integrity is there, it hasn't been changed, and make sure that the right people see the right information and confidentiality. And that's done, has to be done when we store the data, or when we're moving the data, or while the data is being processed. And the last thing, is there a lot of data out in the world stored on all of us? Yes, there is. All right. So that almost finishes Unit 5. And we'll continue with security on Tuesday of next week.